Take a deep breath, and let's hear a story about Jack, the bird caretaker, who fell in love with an artist sketching his toucans. The morning sun filtered through the canopy of the aviary, casting dappled golden light across. His gentle hands moved with practiced precision, the sweet scent of ripe mangoes and papayas filling the humid air around him. The birds' melodious calls echoed throughout the space, creating a natural symphony that always brought a sense of peace to his soul. Jack had been caring for these magnificent creatures for nearly 7 years now, finding in their company a simple joy that made each day worthwhile. The routine of feeding, cleaning, and observing had become a meditation for him, a ritual that connected him deeply to the natural world. It was on a particularly bright Tuesday when he first noticed her, standing quietly by the toucan exhibit, her dark hair pulled back in a loose bun that caught the sunlight in surprising ways. She carried a leather-bound sketchbook, its edges worn from frequent use. Jack found himself pausing in his work, watching the careful way her pencil moved across the page, capturing the essence of the birds with such care it made his heart quicken. The toucans, Mango and Pepper, seemed to recognize her as well, performing their little hops and calls whenever she appeared. For 3 consecutive days, she returned at precisely 2 in the afternoon, settling onto the same wooden bench facing the toucan habitat, its spicy sweetness drifting through the tropical warmth of the aviary. The woman would sip slowly between brush strokes, completely absorbed in her work, seemingly unaware of anything else around her. Jack found himself adjusting his schedule, finding reasons to work near the toucan exhibit when she was expected to arrive. The familiar weight of the feed bucket in his hands provided comfort as he gathered his courage day after day. She wore colors that reminded Jack of the birds themselves: rich greens, deep blues, and occasional flashes of yellow that seemed to belong among the tropical foliage. Her movements were deliberate and calm, never startling the sensitive birds as some visitors often did with their loud voices and sudden gestures. From his discreet distance, Jack could see the growing collection of sketches in her book, each one more detailed and beautiful than the last. The toucans' personalities seemed to emerge from her pages, their curious nature and playful bond captured with remarkable sensitivity. Jack wondered what other wonders filled those pages, what other creatures had been fortunate enough to be seen through her artistic gaze. The aviary's glass dome created a gentle greenhouse effect, wrapping everything in a warm, humid embrace that made the outside world seem far away. Visitors came and went in small groups, their excited whispers and occasional laughter creating a pleasant background rhythm to the days. Jack found himself watching the clock more than usual, his heart lifting when the large wooden doors would swing open at 2, bringing with them a gust of outside air and the woman with the sketchbook. The other birds seemed to notice his distraction, the macaws calling more insistently when they required attention. Jack would blush and return to his tasks, all while keeping the toucan exhibit within view. On the 5th day, a gentle rain pattered against the glass ceiling, creating a soothing percussion that matched the tranquil atmosphere inside. Water droplets collected on broad tropical leaves before falling to the ground in heavy, satisfying plops. The woman arrived wearing a light blue raincoat that darkened at the shoulders from the rainfall outside, her cheeks flushed from hurrying through the weather. Jack noticed how she seemed even more settled today, as if the rain had brought a special quality to the light that pleased her artistic eye. The toucans were particularly active, perhaps enjoying the sound of rain that reminded them of their natural habitat. Jack spent those days learning her small habits, how she would tuck her hair behind her ear when concentrating, the way she occasionally whispered something to the toucans as if sharing a secret. He noticed that she always cleaned her brushes with meticulous care, wiping each one gently on a small cloth she kept in her bag. Sometimes she would pause in her work and simply observe, her eyes taking in every movement and color with a patience that matched Jack's own approach to his feathered charges. In those moments of stillness, Jack felt a curious connection to this stranger, as if they shared an understanding about the value of quiet observation. The aviary filled with the rich scent of blooming orchids that clung to the artificial tree trunks, their subtle fragrance mixing with the earthy aroma of the moist soil beds. Jack had carefully cultivated these plants to create an environment as close to natural as possible for his birds. Sunbeams slanted through the foliage, creating pools of golden light that shifted throughout the day. The woman often positioned herself within these natural spotlights, the illumination bringing out auburn highlights in her dark hair. Jack found himself appreciating how she seemed to become part of the environment rather than an intrusion in it. By the end of the first week, Jack had learned that she preferred the afternoons when the aviary was less crowded. The toucans would grow more animated upon her arrival, hopping from perch to perch with their characteristic bobbing motion. Their large, colorful beaks would tap gently against the barrier whenever she approached, as if greeting an old friend. Jack wondered if they responded to her stillness, to the calm energy she brought into their space. He found himself mimicking her quiet presence, moving more mindfully when he was near her. The collection of staff at the aviary had begun to notice Jack's newfound interest in the toucan exhibit, exchanging knowing glances when he volunteered for duties that kept him in that section. His friend Miguel, who worked with the tropical fish in the adjacent building, teased him gently during their shared lunch breaks. "Just talk to her, amigo," he would say, passing Jack a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. "Birds may understand your silence, but women usually prefer words." Jack would smile and shake his head, focusing on the simple pleasure of fresh bread and cheese, the comfortable weight of friendship. Jack's small apartment above the aviary's administrative office meant he was often first to arrive and last to leave each day. In the evenings, he would sit on his modest balcony with a cup of herbal tea, listening to the nighttime calls of the birds below. The stars would appear one by one in the darkening sky, and Jack would find himself thinking of the woman's sketches, wondering what they looked like when complete. His collection of bird books and field guides filled the shelves of his simple home, their pages well worn from years of reference. On his bedside table, the weekend brought larger crowds to the aviary, pointing at the colorful residents with unrestrained joy, the wonder on young faces as they encountered exotic birds for the first time. Yet he found himself hoping that the crowds wouldn't deter the artist from her regular visit. To his surprise and delight, she appeared at her usual time, finding a quieter corner from which to observe. She wore a sundress patterned with leaves that seemed to ripple with her movements, and Jack noticed she had brought a different set of supplies, today watercolors that caught the light as she mixed them on a small palette. On the 8th day, as the afternoon light began its golden transformation toward evening, Jack finished his final feeding rounds and made a decision. His heart drummed a rapid rhythm against his ribs as he washed his hands thoroughly, checking his reflection in the staff bathroom mirror. The woman was just closing her sketchbook, preparing to leave for the day. The toucans noticed Jack approaching and called out in their distinctive voices, a sound like wooden wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The woman looked up, her eyes meeting his for the first time, and Jack felt a calm certainty replace his nervousness as he smiled and found his voice. "They seem to have taken a special liking to you," Jack said, his voice gentle so as not to startle either the woman or the birds. "I've been watching them watch you for days now." They're quite honored to be your subjects, I think." The woman's surprise melted into a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes in a way that made Jack's heart perform a small somersault. "I'm Jack, by the way," he added, extending a hand that still carried the faint scent of the mangoes he'd been preparing earlier. "I take care of all the birds here, but these two are particular favorites of mine." "I'm Eliza," she replied, her voice carrying a musical quality that reminded Jack of the softer calls of the finches in the tropical songbird section. Her hand met his briefly, cool, and slightly stained with traces of charcoal and colored pencils. She opened her sketchbook slightly, allowing Jack a glimpse of pages filled with vibrant renderings of mango and pepper in various poses. The images were alive with movement and character, capturing subtle details that spoke of long, patient observation. Jack felt a rush of appreciation for her skill and the respect with which she portrayed his avian friends. Their conversation flowed easily, punctuated by the occasional calls of the toucans, who seemed pleased at this development between their two favorite humans. Jack learned that Eliza was a freelance wildlife illustrator, working on a children's book about rainforest birds. Her days were filled with deadlines, client meetings, and long hours at her drafting table. "The only hour I really have to myself these days." Her schedule was demanding, with commitments that stretched from early morning until evening most days. Jack nodded in understanding. As the aviary's closing time approached, the overhead lights dimmed slightly, mimicking the transition to evening in a natural habitat. This subtle change cast a warm, golden glow over everything, softening edges and creating an intimate atmosphere. Jack offered to show Eliza some of the toucan's favorite hiding spots and play behaviors that visitors rarely got to see. She accepted eagerly, tucking her sketchbook into a worn leather messenger bag that hung across her body. Their footsteps fell into a matched rhythm as they walked the winding path. Over the next several days, a pattern emerged that felt as natural as the changing light throughout the aviary. Eliza would arrive at her usual time, setting up her art supplies on the wooden bench. Jack would find reasons to work nearby, attending to the birds while engaging her in conversation during his breaks. They discovered shared interests beyond their love of birds. Both enjoyed botanical gardens, rainy day reading, and the particular pleasure of early morning quietude. The toucans seemed to approve of this development, performing their most charming behaviors when the two humans were together. Jack began keeping notes on particular toucan antics to share with Eliza, his keen observation skills finding new purpose. Jack learned that Eliza lived in a small studio apartment downtown, its windows facing east to catch the morning light that was essential for her work. She described her space as organized chaos, with reference books stacked alongside works in progress and collected specimens' feathers, leaves, and stones gathered during her outdoor excursions. Jack admired her dedication, recognizing the passion that drove her to capture nature's beauty with such precision and care. He found himself thinking of her when he discovered interesting feather patterns or behaviors among his charges. The following week brought unusually heavy rainfall that created a constant, soothing patter against the aviary's glass ceiling. The humidity rose, causing small beads of moisture to form on leaves and glass surfaces. Eliza arrived with her hair curling from the dampness, raindrops still clinging to her jacket like tiny prisms catching the light. Jack had prepared a special viewing area he'd arranged near the toucan night quarters, where she could observe their evening rituals. The space was small, requiring them to stand close together in the warm, fragrant air. Jack was acutely aware of the gentle lavender scent of Eliza's hair, mixing pleasantly with the tropical aromas of the aviary. Their conversations deepened as days passed, moving beyond polite exchanges to reveal more personal thoughts and experiences. Jack shared stories of growing up on his family's farm, where his fascination with birds began with a rescued barn owl. Eliza spoke of her childhood in a coastal town, where she spent hours sketching seabirds and developing the patience that now served her art so well. They discovered a shared appreciation for the way observation could become a form of meditation, a practice of being fully present with another living being. In the background, the aviary's ambient sounds created a gentle soundtrack, soft calls, rustling leaves, and the occasional splash from the misting system that maintained the tropical humidity. "I wish I had more time," Eliza confessed one afternoon, her pencil pausing above her sketch pad. The afternoon sun caught in her dark lashes as she looked up at Jack with a small smile tinged with regret. "There's so much more I'd like to see here, so many more birds to draw, but my schedule." She gestured vaguely, the motion expressing the constraints that kept her visits brief and precious. Jack nodded, understanding the gentle tension between desire and responsibility. "The birds will be here," he assured her, his voice carrying the steady reliability that characterized his nature. "And so will I," he added, the words simple, but weighted with meaning that hung in the humid air between them. Jack began to look forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays with particular anticipation as these were the days Eliza could most consistently visit. He found himself paying extra attention to the toucan exhibit on those mornings. His colleague Miguel noticed these special preparations and smiled knowingly, but said nothing, simply helping Jack arrange branches and fruit in the most photogenic configurations. The rhythm of Jack's week began to revolve around these visits, the days between filled with thoughts of what he might share with Eliza when next they met. One Thursday, Eliza didn't arrive at her usual time. Jack found himself checking the entrance repeatedly, worry creasing his brow as the minutes ticked by. The toucan seemed restless as well, moving from perch to perch as if searching for their missing admirer. When she finally appeared nearly an hour late, sinking onto the bench with uncharacteristic heaviness. "I've been working through the night to keep up." Jack responded by quietly producing a thermos of herbal tea he'd prepared, pouring the steaming, honey-sweetened liquid into the cup and offering the small comfort without words. Their time together became increasingly precious as Eliza's deadline approached, her visits less frequent but somehow more meaningful. Jack began leaving small surprises for her, a particularly beautiful feather he'd found. These tokens appeared on her usual bench, silent messengers of his thinking of her between visits. Eliza responded in kind, leaving quick sketches for him to find Jack's hands as he arranged fruit for the birds. The particular tilt of his head when he was listening to bird calls, small captured moments that revealed her own attention to detail. The toucans, perhaps sensing the importance of their role in this unfolding story, seemed to perform their most endearing behaviors when Jack and Eliza were together. They would present their favorite toys, preen each other with exaggerated care, or hop along their branches in synchronized movements that resembled a carefully choreographed dance. Jack explained that these behaviors indicated comfort and security, a sign that the birds felt safe in their environment. "They only display like this when they're completely at ease," he told Eliza, his voice soft with affection for both the birds and the woman beside him. "They trust you now," he added, the words carrying a weight of meaning that extended beyond the toucans. As weeks passed, their connection deepened through these shared moments amidst the aviary's lush environment. Jack found himself opening up about his dreams of someday establishing a rehabilitation center for injured wild birds. Their conversations often continued until closing time, when they would reluctantly part ways at the aviary entrance. The goodbye ritual evolved to include lingering glances and the occasional brush of fingers, each touch brief but electric with unspoken feelings. The evening sky would be painted in spectacular oranges and pinks as they stood together, neither quite ready to end their time together, despite the demands waiting in their separate lives. Six months after their first conversation, Jack stood in a small gallery downtown. The central piece featured mango and pepper, rendered in exquisite detail with watercolors that captured not just their appearance, but somehow their essence as well. Jack moved slowly through the space, taking in each piece with a sense of wonder and pride. Visitors murmured appreciatively around him, pointing out details in the artwork that revealed Eliza's deep understanding of avian subjects. The lighting was soft and warm, creating an atmosphere that reminded Jack of late afternoons in the aviary, when the sun slanted through the glass dome to touch everything with gold. Eliza found him standing before a piece she had kept secret, a portrait of Jack himself, surrounded by birds in flight. In this rendering, his gentle hands were outstretched, offering seeds to a diverse flock that showed no fear of human touch. "This is how they see you," Eliza said softly, appearing at his side like a materialization of his thoughts. Her fingers found his, interlacing with practiced familiarity that still caused his heart to quicken. "And how I see you too." The simple words carried the weight of months of growing closeness, of shared moments and parallel passions that had gradually woven their lives together. The success of Eliza's exhibition led to more commissions, allowing her to be more selective with her projects and create space in her schedule for what truly mattered. She began spending 3 afternoons a week at the aviary, setting up a small portable easel in various locations to capture the diversity of birds in Jack's care. The administrators, recognizing the educational value of her work, offered her an artist-in-residence position that included leading monthly sketching workshops for visitors. Jack would watch from a respectful distance as she guided participants with gentle instructions, her passion for both art and birds evident in every demonstration. The pride he felt in these moments was a warm, steady glow in his chest. Jack's small apartment above the aviary's offices had gradually transformed with Eliza's influence. Her sketches now adorned the previously bare walls, bringing color and movement to the space. Potted plants occupied the windowsills, their green presence creating a connection between his home and workplace below. On weekends, they would prepare simple meals together in his compact kitchen, the domestic rhythm of chopping vegetables and simmering soups becoming a cherished ritual. They would eat on the balcony when weather permitted, watching the stars appear while sharing the small events of their days. These quiet evenings helped balance the busy energy of their professional lives. The aviary's annual fundraising gala provided an opportunity for Jack to introduce Eliza to his extended network of wildlife conservationists and ornithologists. She wore a dress the color of toucan feathers, emerald green with accents of gold and yellow, that caught the light as she moved through the elegantly decorated space. Jack found himself repeatedly distracted from conversations by the sight of her animated discussions with his colleagues, her hands gesturing expressively as she described her artistic process. Later in the evening, they slipped away from the crowd to visit the sleeping birds, moving quietly through the dimly lit pathways. In the peaceful silence, surrounded by gentle nighttime rustlings, Jack took Eliza's hand and thanked her for bringing new dimensions of beauty into his life. On a particularly beautiful spring morning, Jack arrived at work to find a new toucan had been brought to the aviary of rescue from an illegal wildlife trafficking operation. The bird was understandably distressed, refusing food and hiding in the farthest corner of its temporary enclosure. Jack spent hours sitting quietly nearby, speaking in soothing tones and offering the most tempting fruits he could find. When Eliza arrived that afternoon, she joined his patient vigil, her sketchbook open but temporarily forgotten as they focused on the traumatized bird. Together, they created a space of such gentle calm that by evening, the toucan had moved closer, accepting a piece of papaya from Jack's outstretched hand. The shared triumph in that moment needed no words, just exchanged glances of profound understanding. The changing seasons brought subtle shifts to the aviary's atmosphere, different flowering plants, variations in light quality, new seasonal behaviors among the birds. Jack and Eliza documented these changes together, his detailed observation notes, complementing her visual records to create a comprehensive chronicle of life within the glass dome. They began collaborating on a book that would combine his scientific knowledge with her artistic vision, working side by side in the evenings at her studio or his apartment. Their creative rhythms harmonized naturally, each bringing unique strengths to the shared project. The manuscript gradually took shape, becoming a tangible symbol of how their individual paths had merged into a common journey. Eliza's freelance work allowed her to travel occasionally, visiting wildlife sanctuaries and natural habitats to gather reference material for her illustrations. Jack would care for her collection of houseplants during these absences, facettiming in the evenings so she could share the day's discoveries. Her return was always celebrated with a special visit to see Mango and Pepper, who seemed to recognize her even after weeks away. The toucans would perform their greeting display hopping excitedly from perch to perch, their large beaks opening and closing in silent communication. These reunions filled the aviary with a palpable joy that visitors noticed and smiled at, though they couldn't know the full story behind the birds' enthusiasm. On the anniversary of their first conversation, Jack arranged a special surprise with the help of his colleagues. When Eliza arrived at the aviary, she was given access to a newly completed walk-through aviary section where visitors could experience closer contact with some of the friendlier resident birds. Jack waited inside, surrounded by tropical foliage and the gentle sounds of flowing water from a small stream feature. The humidity wrapped around them like a warm embrace as Eliza entered, her eyes widening at the immersive beauty of the space. Small, colorful birds flitted freely around them, occasionally landing on strategically placed perches near enough to touch. The moment felt magical, suspended in time. Jack had prepared a picnic of sorts, setting out a blanket with containers of fresh fruit and small pastries from their favorite bakery. They sat together in this paradise of their own making, the sounds of content birds creating the perfect soundtrack for their celebration. Eliza presented Jack with a leather-bound journal she had made by hand, its pages alternating between blank paper for his notes and her pre-drawn sketches of birds in flight. Jack's gift to her was a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a toucan feather, which he fastened around her neck with slightly trembling fingers. The metal warmed quickly against her skin, catching the dappled light that filtered through the canopy above. Their relationship had found its own natural rhythm, like the seasonal cycles of the birds they both loved. They maintained independent lives and careers while creating a shared existence that enriched both paths, rather than restricting either. Weekend mornings were spent bird-watching in local parks. Afternoons often found them in comfortable silence, Jack reading ornithology journals while Eliza sketched beside him, their shoulders just touching. They had learned each other's habits and preferences, creating a harmony that felt both supportive and freeing. Like the pair of toucans that had brought them together, they had formed a bond built on mutual respect and genuine delight in each other's company. As twilight descended on their anniversary celebration, painting the aviary in soft purples and deep blues, Jack and Eliza stood before the toucan exhibit where it had all begun. Mango and Pepper watched them with bright, curious eyes, their magnificent beaks gleaming in the gentle lighting. "I never knew that waiting for you to speak to me could lead to all this," Eliza said, her voice soft with reverence for the journey they had shared. Jack smiled, thinking of all the days he had watched her from a distance, gathering courage. "Some things are worth waiting for," he replied simply, his arm around her waist, holding her close as the day's final golden light filtered through the glass dome above. "And some connections once made last a lifetime." Around them, the aviary settled into evening rhythms, birds finding their roosting spots with contented calls that seemed to affirm the truth of his words. The future stretched before them like an unfinished sketch, full of possibility and promise. They had plans for collaboration. His bird rehabilitation center would include a studio space where Eliza could work and teach, creating educational materials to help visitors understand the importance of conservation. Their shared vision had room for both of their dreams, expanded and enriched by their connection. As the aviary's lights dimmed for the night, Jack and Eliza walked hand in hand toward the exit, their steps matched in perfect synchrony. Behind them, the toucans settled onto their perch, nestling close together in the gathering darkness, their silhouettes forming a single graceful shape against the night sky, a perfect emblem of the gentle, enduring bond that had formed between two souls who had found each other through patient observation, shared passion, and the courage to bridge the distance between watching and connecting.